Okay, this is a call to order of the second regular meeting for May 2020, the Bridgeport Board of Education. Today is Tuesday, May 26, 2020. The time is noted as being 6:39 p.m. If you'd all observe the Pledge of Allegiance, there's a flag being displayed. I pledge allegiance
The flag of the
United States
of America,
and
to the republic
for
which it stands,
one nation,
one
nation
under
God,
under
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
and
and justice.
justice for all.
Okay. Next is the call of roll. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Ooh, we don't want to see that. We look crazy.
Yes. Miss Allen? Mr. Benahan?
Present.
Miss Martinez? Mr. Sokolovic?
Present.
Mr. Taylor? Mr. Weldon?
Present.
Mr. Ellingsworth?
Present.
And Bobby Brown present. Wait, I think I'm missing Joe. The other Joe, I'm sorry.
Joe Lombard.
Joe Lombard.
Here.
Okay, good. I got everyone.
Okay. We have a quorum. So I'm going to go to the first item on the agenda, which is public comment. I believe we have one person who has signed up for actual public comment. Is that correct, Mr. Kostelowski?
Yes, that is correct, and we have that person standing by. If you're ready, we can patch them in.
Sure, please do that.
Okay.
Okay, Dasha is available. Okay, Dasha, you are on for public comment. Thank you.
Okay, if you'd state your full name for the record
Dasha Spell.
and
I
the
am
topic that you wish to address this evening.
The topic I wish to address this evening is actually can someone mute? Okay. The topic that I plan on addressing this evening has to do with the 2020 census. And the reason why I'm actually talking about this evening is because right now, I know that we want money for our district and we need money. There's things that we need to, in regards to just basically making next year workable. The 2020 census, right now, the city of Bridgeport is at the bottom of replies through the actual citizens. I have the data, I have the information, and I'm just asking that the board help with promoting our residents, our parents, to complete the 2020 census. We could lose out on additional money off of this, and we have 10 years out before we have another chance. So it's really important that I'm just asking if you can help support this process. As you know, Mayor Gannon went online the other day and talked about this. I'm asking that the school district get online, do the phone blast, and remind the residents to fill out the 2020 census. And also, I do have the contact numbers for different languages, and I can send it to Superintendent Castani. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Please, Ms. Stone.
I'm just asking if you can help support this process. As you know, Mayor Gannon went online the other day and talked about this. I'm asking.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Spell. I believe you concluded. Yes, please do get in touch with the superintendent's office. Send your thoughts to him, and I'm sure his office will take it from there. I believe that concludes public comment. Is that correct, Mr. Kostelowski? There are no other members?
Yes, there is no other members for this section. Yep.
Okay. It is noted that somebody did sign up as a public comment, but it was more COVID-19 related. So that individual's question/remark is going to be addressed under the proper agenda item in the Q&A section. Next on the agenda is approval of board minutes. We have one set of minutes to approve this evening, which is the May 11th, 2020 regular public meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to
moved.
approve.
Moved by Mr. Sakalovic. Is there a second?
Second, Bobby Brown.
Second by Ms. Brown. Is there any comment or discussion or edits to be made? Okay. No such comments to be made. I'll seek a vote on this. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed signify by saying nay. Are there any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Chairman's report. I don't have anything formal to report since the last meeting. Other than I know people are anxious about graduations, and there's been various pieces of information that have gone out there. I'll defer to the superintendent on that point. It's an evolving topic, so I'll leave that to him to address, unless anyone has any questions for me. Okay. Committee reports and referrals. Facilities Committee, Mr. Illingworth, anything to report?
We will be having a meeting next Monday. I believe it is June 1st. We will have a facilities and a governance meeting on the same night.
Okay. Are there any referrals for facilities? Okay. Finance Committee, Mr. Sakalovic, anything to report?
Yes, the Finance Committee met on April 13th. We discussed, we had an upcoming item for nutrition coming ready for approval. And we had some somewhat pleasant news that we haven't heard in a while. It looks like this is going to be one of the first budget years in a long time. With tentatively, the numbers shake out as the way they look, that we won't have to remove any staff this year. We look like we're on track to be doing pretty much okay. But one area of concern I have with the Finance Committee and the meeting is the lack of printed material being presented at Finance. The numbers are very difficult to track, and going forward, the ease of use for the committee members, the public, and ourselves, I would like to request and ask that we have written reports. I know some of the numbers are fluid. They could be marked tentative or whatever have you to make sure people know those aren't solid numbers. But going to in the middle of a finance meeting, adding up numbers and the millions of dollars and trying to think of questions to ask off of those numbers is not really a good way to run the meetings. And going forward, I would like to have paper backup before the meeting presented to the committee members and the board so we can ask intelligent questions, well thought out questions.
Okay, do noted.
Okay. Are there any referrals for finance?
Oh, and apologies, we'll be meeting on possibly Wednesday, June 3rd, at 6 or 6:30, depending on availability of my committee members.
Okay. Governance, Mr. Illingworth, anything to report?
Meeting next Monday, June 1st.
Okay. Any referrals for governance? Okay. Teaching and learning, anything to report?
Nothing to report. We did not meet in the interim. We're looking for a meeting either Tuesday or next, same 6 to 6:30, depending on availability of committee members.
Okay. Any referrals, teaching and learning? Okay. Personnel Committee met on May 13th and interviewed for 4 executive director positions. Referrals or recommendations were made to the superintendent's office. I don't know if he has interviewed anyone or come to any final conclusions on what he's going to do. If he's not prepared to report on that at this point, I understand. But that was the business that was conducted on May 13th. Next Personnel Committee meeting will be tomorrow, May 27th, and we will be interviewing for various principal positions. Are there any referrals for the Personnel Committee? Students and families, Mr. Benahan.
Student family, we're gonna meet this Thursday at 5:30.
Okay. Any referrals for students and families? Okay. Contracts Committee has yet to meet. That committee is relatively new and is designed to go over any possible solicitations for bidding opportunities and to review bids that are received that require board level approval and various MOAs and the like. I believe the superintendent has some contractual items he's going to be submitting in the short term, but I'll leave those for when he's ready to do that. Are there any referrals for contracts? Ad hoc committee, Great City Schools, Males of Color. Skolovic, anything to report?
Yes. Nothing to report. We did not meet. I'm looking for a meeting on June 9th.
Yeah. Any referrals? Superintendent's report. As per the last couple of times, one or two times, Mr. Testine will give a general operational report. That will be followed up by a Q&A regarding district operations during the COVID-19 pandemic. So, Mr. Testani, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening. Just to piggyback on Mr. Weldon's report from personnel, we are finalizing the letters to go out to the 4 executive director candidates. I'm happy to report that the 4 candidates that have been chosen to fill those positions are Victor Black, executive director of secondary education and magnet programs, Selena Morgan, director of elementary education, Herminio Planas, executive director of elementary education and mathematics, and Melissa Jenkins, executive director of early childhood education. So I'm happy to report that the four of them have been solidified to continue on in those roles in a permanent position. We did and we will have interviews again. You guys will, the personnel committee will interview folks for a number of principal positions tomorrow evening. Unfortunately, just to make you aware, we had a second candidate drop out of the running for one of the schools. That's the second one in 2 weeks. So that job has been reposted and we will begin interviews when the application process is over. So it's unfortunate we had 2 candidates and both due to personal reasons decided that, under the circumstances not to leave their current positions in other districts.
Okay. Fair enough.
We are continuing to feed. Our food and nutrition staff has done an amazing job in serving well over 600,000 meals since the closure. It's been a tremendous effort on their part. They've worked hard every single day since the closure without any complaints. So I really give them a lot of credit. We not only are feeding an exceptional number of people now, we are opening 2 additional locations beginning Thursday. We'll be opening a location at Discovery School and we'll be opening a location at Dunbar. So we'll have 2 additional locations. So the expansion will now be 22 feeding locations. We will look at some possible adjustments if necessary for our summer feeding based on the availability of buildings. We do have some buildings that we're doing some work on in the summer months, so that may cause a disruption to service in certain buildings, but we'll make sure that we continue to maintain a high level of service for our students and families. Just a few updates as a result. The last day for students to complete and hand in work will be June 17th. That has been announced to all families. So We're continuing to provide our distance learning through that date. Most classes will end around the 10th at the high schools, and there'll be final projects that students will have a week to complete in lieu of final exams and the such. So that's been going pretty well, considering that we are in the home stretch now. The weather has not been very great, so I think that's also helped keep kids engaged a little bit longer than anticipated. I know that it's a struggle across the state to keep kids engaged as we get toward the June month. We are beginning to schedule times. Principals are scheduling the families to come retrieve any belongings that may have been left behind for students' personal belongings, and also nurses, school nurses, to have parents come in and pick up any medications that may be stored at school that were left behind with the abrupt closure. We are giving out any printed materials to families this week, Thursday and Friday, at our schools. We'll also be giving out at our schools the donated Scholastic book packs for kindergarten through 8th grade as a result of the Partnership for Connecticut's donation to the Alliance District. So anyone who, even if you participate online for school, we encourage everyone kindergarten through 8th grade to come down and pick up a book pack. It's a pack of 4 books at grade level for students. So we have enough for every K through 8 student in the district, and we encourage everyone to pick those up this week, Thursday and Friday, at their schools. We will also be setting up in the coming weeks, and we'll talk about it. I'm sure we'll make another announcement prior to our last board meeting for the return of devices, that students who have district-owned devices, will set up a time for them to come in and return those devices so we can make sure that they're up and running. High school summer school will be virtual, so we'll make sure that we have enough devices for every student that takes a high school summer credit recovery class. There'll be no printed materials. Those we'll make sure that there's enough devices to cover every child that participates. This year, there will be no cost to Bridgeport Public School students to take a virtual class for Credit Recovery High School, given the circumstances we're under. But we're also limiting our summers program to Bridgeport Public School high school students only. In the past, we've registered and had students from other districts and other schools participate. Unfortunately, because it's on teams, we're going to have only our Bridgeport Public School students participating this year. We continue to survey parents, brief survey on reopening and help guide some of our planning for reopening under the guidelines of the state of Connecticut in the fall. We encourage all parents to continue to fill out those surveys. We will take another temperature of parents as we get into the summer, given that circumstances may change, things may evolve either for the better or for the worse regarding the pandemic. So we want to make sure we stay in touch with parents. We are noticing that some parents are filling out the survey twice. Please, we ask that only parents fill out the survey once. It's noticeable when it's more than once, so you're only going to be counted once. We're assuming that parents that said no to the survey and the survey ended, when they went back and said yes, they were trying to get a peek at what the other questions were. So we're using the no answer. And then again, they'll have that opportunity probably in sometime late July to take the survey again to give us a little bit more information if things have changed. We have talked about and mentioned graduations over the past several meetings. Unfortunately, because of where we're at and the slow reopening of the state of Connecticut, the live graduations as we had planned, even in the stadium, on the field, and limited number of participants in the stands is not being allowed statewide. The governor's office has been very clear in the state to not cause inequities across the state even in districts that have not been hit with high cases and high numbers of positive tests, will be subject to the same guidelines. So our high schools are planning a couple of things to try to make it special for our graduates. There'll be we're ordering district purchased signs that can either be put in windows of homes or on lawns or in cars, however they want to do it, to celebrate the graduates. Each high school will have their individual logo and everything put on there for class of 2020. Congratulations. There'll be a video montage set up of all the graduates with a taped congratulatory message by the mayor, by myself, by the principal, the valedictorian, salutatorian. And if any of the board members would like to tape a small message, a congratulatory message, I know it's not usually the customary at the graduations for board members to speak, but if you want to tape a little message, I think it would be a nice thing to include in this. So we'll get some information out to you this week, so we can get just a short congratulatory message from our board members for our graduates of 2020. And then the last thing will be, all our schools are scheduling a time on their campuses, kind of a little car parade kind of thing where the graduate can come pick up their diploma, get a picture. If they want to purchase a cap and gown and participate with a cap and gown, they may. We're not requiring it for students and families that don't want to participate with a cap and gown, but they can still participate in the parade and the nice day to come and pick up the graduation, the diploma, excuse me. So that's where we're at right now. We have, and we will begin planning for a reentry in the fall. I mentioned this on Friday that we will start planning on this Thursday. We have a task force of officials that have been put together. That task force then will be broken into some committees, which will then work with focus groups and gather information and come back where we can ultimately come up with a plan for reopening in the fall. We'll plan for 3 models, a regular opening of school where all students and staff would return to the buildings as they did prior to our closure. We'll plan for a hybrid, whatever that will look like, given any constraints on class sizes and social distancing. And we'll also plan for full distance learning if the requirements and guidelines make us open school in a distance learning mode. So we recognize that we did the best job we could with distance learning given the circumstances, but we need to plan and do much better if we're required to do so in the fall. And we will be ready if that is the time we have to do it, whether it's in August, whether we have to pivot to that at some point during the school year, again, like we did this year. We will definitely be much more prepared as a school district to provide high quality instruction virtually. That's all I have right now. I think that's a lot to digest. If you guys have any questions before we go to the public, I'm all ears.
I just wanted to reinforce that Mr. Testani, remind people that Mr. Testani has been doing a series of Facebook Live events every Friday at 9 a.m. You can access them through Facebook. If you're not sure how to find it on Facebook, go to our homepage and there's a link. So have your Facebook open, click the link on our homepage, it'll take you right there. They've been very informative sessions. They typically last about an hour, hour and 15 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. So for anyone who's interested, there's a good deal of value to get up-to-date information on things as they evolve week to week. Other than that, I don't have any questions for Mr. Testani. I'll just go down the list, see if anybody else does. Mr. Illingworth, do you have any questions for the superintendent?
No, sir.
Okay. Ms. Brown, any questions for Mr. Testani?
Not a question, just a comment. I know that on your Facebook Live you mentioned about the devices, and I had a few different parents inbox me and say, "Well, what are our students going to do about the devices over the summer?" So I'm glad that you definitely cleared that up, saying that it will be provided for those students during that particular time for those that actually need it. So that was like, I was going to ask you that question, but you already answered it. So I think that's good, and I'll do my part too to let those who were concerned, to let them know the process of how they're going to do it.
Okay, great. And
Okay.
this year, just to add before the next question, for many of you, you know, for about 12 or 13 years, the high school summer school program, I was the one in charge. So I want to make sure that I turn it over and it's in good hands going forward this year. Mr. Vernon Thompson, assistant principal over at Harding High School, has been chosen as my successor. I have full confidence that Mr. Thompson will continue running a high-quality program, and whatever support that I can give and Dr. Black and the rest of the team can give him, we will, to make sure that it's a success for all students this year.
I think Mr. Thompson will do fine.
Yep.
Next, Mr. Benahan, any questions?
Yes, I have some questions from Mr. Testani. First of all, I'm very glad that we have almost 600,000, food meal. I know the parents enjoy, and trust me, I'm there when they come pick up, and they're very happy. They're very proud, everything they're doing. You said this Corey and Dunbar is gonna be open, so you're gonna fix the list. So you're gonna add this to school.
Yes, I believe it was revised today and put up by our office.
And another thing I want is very important. I know some staff, they do an amazing job, but some staff, they need to answer back our parents. Sometimes they don't answer because they call me, and I said, I'll just let you know. But some staff had to answer back our parents. I know I can tell you, and Miss Lasky from Bassett High School, she's doing a phenomenal, amazing job with the special needs kids. Mr. Testani, she's there. She wakes them up. She's waiting for them. She's amazing. About the books, you say K to 8th grade. So each school, they're going to have that book back for the gift to the kids?
Yep, they've all been delivered, confirmed, and they should be ready to go. There was a couple of schools I know that did not receive their delivery last week, and I was able to contact Scholastic and hook up the representative there with the prospective principals, and so they should be there for Thursday's distribution.
And the last one, the survey. Do you know how much percent parents are, fill up that survey?
I did not get an update this morning. I did not ask Mr. Postolovsky, but I know we had about 4,000 responses midway last week, so we were getting quite a bit. Like I said, we had to decipher, and we'll have to go through to make sure the duplicates are extracted out, but we're starting to see a lot of folks doing the survey. It's a quick survey. It should not take more than a few minutes, actually a minute. We just want to get an idea where people's thinking is right now on whether they feel it would be a time in the fall, given the circumstances today, if they would send their child to school or not.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stani. Thank you for your amazing job. That's it, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Next on the list, Mr. Lombard, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, I just had questions about the graduation. There was those two parts. The part with the diploma parade, could you describe how that would look again? I think I missed it, or how that would work.
Each of the principals is put together a plan. So cars would line up, students would stay in their cars with their families. There would be some sort of ceremonial celebration, I guess. I'm not sure how each school is going to do it, if there's going to be any music. We're encouraging them to have a backdrop. As the cars pull up, the graduates can come out, get their diploma safely, obviously, and under all the guidelines, snap a picture in many cases, getting their diploma with a background or some sort of backdrop, and then get back in the car. So for the larger school, like Central High School, they're planning to do this over 3 days so that everyone has a time to come in and it's not rushed through.
Okay, thank you. And then for the first part with the virtual part, with the speeches by the valedictorian and salutatorian, would those be all separate for each high school, separate
Yes.
virtual graduation?
Yes, and when the dates are all finalized for the car parades, obviously I'll inform you of the dates and times, and all the staff, will be able to participate and wave and give their support to the graduates.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Skolovic, any questions or comments?
No.
Okay, that was simple,
Wow.
and I don't have any
That's
myself.
all my questions.
What about Miss Allen?
Oh, Ms. Al's here?
Oh,
Is Ms. Allen
I don't
here?
have any. I think that it's really great how it's been set up, considering all of this chaos that we have with the school system. It seems to be going well.
Thank you.
Let the record reflect that Ms. Allen has joined the proceeding. She wasn't present during the roll call. I want to make sure her presence is noted. Mr.
Oh,
Sakala.
I've been here for a while, quite a while, through all of the what's the name, but I guess you just didn't see me plugged in. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sakala, did you have something to ask? Skolovic?
He said no.
He said no. Okay. So we're moving along to the second part of the superintendent's report, which is public Q&A regarding district operations during COVID-19. Mr. Postolowski, do you have anybody queued up to ask a question?
Yes, we have somebody that had submitted the questions, but for some reason we're not able to connect with her, but we're going to have the questions read right now. So here
Sure.
you go.
Whenever you're ready.
Question one is, will BBOE employees be required to be tested when they go back to work?
Good question.
Right now, Bridgeport Board of Ed employees are not required to be tested, but we are bringing folks back with, under responsible and the guidelines set forth in Reopen Connecticut. We are providing for all employees that need one a mask. There will not be a mask obviously provided daily, but there is masks that are available for our office staff at schools. And again, we continue with our security staff and our food and nutrition and those folks here at 45 Lion Terrace as well.
And
Now,
would
may
think-
I ask a question here?
Yes,
Allen?
When you say they will not be tested, is taking their temperature upon return a form of testing?
well, right now for office staff, that's not a requirement. If we do have any type of in-person summer program or anything, I'm presuming when we return in the fall, all kids and staff, all students and staff, Ms. Allen, excuse me, would have to be given a temperature check from what I'm seeing for the summer guidelines. But anybody who's exhibiting any symptoms or not feeling well, we're encouraging them to stay home until they do feel well. We're staggering days and times for folks here in the office at Lion Terrace where it's not possible to have 5 or under. We're not open to the public here at Lion Terrace. We're encouraging any parents that need to go into our school buildings to make sure that they set up an appointment, and only if it's absolutely necessary to do so.
Okay. These are actually good questions for the task force, the reopening task force to be looking at and asking and considering. Along those lines, Mr. Testani, do you have an idea of how long you envision this task force to take to establish the parameters or the guidelines for a reopening in September? Are you looking at end of July, mid-August?
My assumption is I put together a draft of areas that need to be addressed, but there's also at the end of each component the question mark of more with a question mark. So there may be other things that will be added to consider when it comes to reopening that I may not be thinking of. I've seen and read some things where there's about 91 questions that need to be asked that we should consider. I think that might be excessive, but that covers the full gamut of things that people have submitted nationwide on what they think school districts should consider before reopening. I'm not going to give my personal opinion because I think, my situation is much different than others, but I do respect the fact that people have a right to have their own feelings about themselves and their children. Unfortunately, the concerns of our students and staff is top priority. But if we're allowed to reopen, whether it's in a full-blown school mode or in a hybrid, then we need to follow the guidelines to do so. I am a firm believer that it would be much easier to end the school year as we did in distance learning. I think opening a school year in distance learning mode without any face-to-face contact at all will be extremely challenging for kids.
Matt, oh, I'm sorry. Finish. I'm sorry.
Kids at least, students had a reference person, their teacher, so they knew a familiar face that they could reach out to. Coming into a new school year without that familiarity would be extremely difficult. So I would advocate whether it's, split sessions, wherever the task force goes, or every other day attendance, that if we have the ability to get face-to-face contact with our students and staff, that it is extremely important that we do that.
You answered my question about in the event that you don't have a plan, that split sessions will be considered.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's important that we find out from parents which one would be more preferable. As I mentioned on Friday in the Facebook Live, either way, we're not going to make everyone happy. Unfortunately, though, we're going to have to go with the consensus on how we would implement the hybrid model.
Okay.
The gentleman has his hand up.
May I?
Hang on. Is Alan?
May I interject something? Yes.
Okay.
If in the event that you do have to go to split sessions, how will this work in the face of the hourly time that they have to put in per hour? I know that they couldn't get any more than 3.5 hours in with lunch or whatever else other activities they have. How would you propose this be done, or have you thought this through thoroughly?
Well, I have thought it over several times. I think it's going to be something that we're going to have to get some concession from the State Department of Ed and their number of hours required. We're also going to have to get a lot of buy-in from our collective bargaining units to make this work. However, I think that given some of the temperature I've taken with collective bargaining, I think every other day schedules, staggered schedules, would probably be the one that infringes the least upon people's contractual rights. And I think it also would be the least costly to run for the school district. So, and probably preferable for families to be able to plan for full days of childcare rather than a disruption halfway through the day, which is extremely difficult under normal circumstances.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Benahan, you had something to say?
Yes, I know, Mr. Testani, you're asking, you answer some question, but we have a plan exactly when these kids coming back in September. They have to use masks, I know the staff and everything. It's something so scary because you know how they are sometimes, our kids. It's something very, oh my God.
Well, right now, the summer guidelines require all students and staff, including parents on school grounds, to requires them to wear a mask unless they have a medical exemption, meaning the student that would prohibit them from wearing a mask. any type of severe respiratory complications would exempt them from having to do so. I think it's going to be extremely challenging, especially with younger students, to keep a mask on all day. I know it's difficult for me to have one on myself, given the fact that it gets very hot at times. But so, I mean, we're preparing. We've ordered 500,000 masks to have ready for the school district. That would help, but that still would not be enough to provide everyone with. So right now, we would have to provide for the summer students that did not show up with one. So we would have to encourage folks to make sure that a mask is available to and from school.
I mean, did the study how
Yeah.
the thing in the school when the classroom is 20, 25 kids, and then they're gonna separate? That we're gonna have space. Let's say, give example, a classroom is 20, and then you're not gonna have, let's say, put 10 kids. But we're gonna have space, high school, they will have space to, separate all these kids or something like that. I was worried about that.
Well, I think that's why the alternating days will come into play. And I think for high school, because we will have one-to-one devices, we could step up and increase the way we provide distance learning as well. My concern is, and there was a lot of questions on the Facebook Live on Friday. Parents used the term homeschooling. I tried to make sure that I was very clear that there's a difference between distance learning and homeschooling. They obviously have the right to homeschool their child without the interference of the school district. If we are open in any fashion, parents that decide to opt out, unfortunately, it's going to be very difficult to run a distance learning program for certain students and a hybrid for other students. So we really are going to need a lot of guidance on how we can enforce a hybrid compared to distance learning.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tom.
Ms. Allen, did
I
you
have a
have something else to add?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I just think that, I don't know, split sessions have always, were used in the past for, educational purposes. And, it just looks to me, if you could get the parents to consent and take a poll of parents who would require the split sessions morning or afternoons, which would be favorable, and you try to give the parents the opportunity to opt in that way.
Absolutely.
Does anyone else have anything to add?
Ms. Brown had a question.
Ms. Brown?
Yeah, I was wondering, Mr. Testani, are we gonna do some type of health session when school starts back open? So, talking about the important, because I'll give you a perfect example. A lot of our younger children they just know that something bad has happened in the world. They don't know exactly what that something bad is. And then you have some high schoolers who understand what it is, but may not understand why they have to, wear the mask. Why in certain areas their friends may not have to be doing that versus Connecticut. Is there something we can put together, in the beginning of a health information for the students once they come back, so that this way they understand not only are they getting it at home, but they're reinforcing the same message at school as well?
Yeah, I think that's a great thought there, because one of the things that I have been thinking about over the last several weeks is that the first week or two of school would be more of trying to get into the new norm and teaching students and getting them used to the fact that we may have to live this way for a little while. And that would incorporate all the new social distancing, the importance of social distancing, the use of hand sanitizer. We're purchasing several stations to put throughout buildings, washing hands, and all the reasons why we're doing this to help keep not only themselves safe, but their family members as well.
Excuse me, are we going to be able to supply masks on a daily basis or a weekly basis, or how do we propose to circulate this effort?
Well, I'm thinking on a weekly basis, but I know that's going to be challenging. But if we get people into the right mindset, and this is something they're practicing now and throughout the summer, I think it'll be something that will be a lot easier for us, given down the road, a couple of months of them doing this consistently. I think it seems pretty widespread throughout the city. I do see some folks a little lax with the younger children that they have, but I see a lot of our high school kids walking around, and they're all pretty responsible wearing the masks. I think it's a good message that they've received.
Just
Thank
doing
you.
the math real quick, if you've ordered 500,000 masks at 21,000 students plus another 3,000 staff, that means each individual would be allotted 20 masks for the year. I don't know how you divvy that up, if it's a mask a week for the balance of the school year, but that's what the numbers equate to.
Well, I'm pretty optimistic that our staff would be able to provide themselves a mask.
Right, and then in those scenarios, it's all the better.
Yeah.
So, does anyone else have anything to say?
Yes, there was one more question submitted.
Who is this?
I'm reading the questions off that were submitted. We were unable to get a hold of the
Oh, okay,
person that submitted them. So this is from Joanne Manzo.
okay. Ms. Manzo, how are you?
She wanted to, she's, sorry, she's not on the call.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
The question is, will BBOE employees be required to be tested once school is reopened?
That question, I believe, was already asked.
Yeah, I asked that question.
Ms. Allen asked that. That's something that I think the superintendent and his task force are going to have to evaluate. And I think it's going to require some negotiation with the union if you're going to require them to do anything like that. Would you agree, Mr. Testani?
Yeah, right now, anyone working in summer programs, if we do offer them, are not required to be tested. They're just required to have their temperature taken prior to starting work. We did send out by mistake earlier today, just to give an example, that the city is requiring folks to go and get tested tomorrow, free testing. And we already immediately got some pushback from folks saying that's a violation of their civil rights. So again, to require people to be tested may not be feasible. Require a temperature check, definitely.
Okay, so it might be something that you can strongly recommend, but in the end, can't actually.
Well, right, and the reason why I've done a little research on this myself. I was tested a couple of weeks ago, just out of curiosity, but that doesn't mean
Did you pass?
Yes, I was negative, but that doesn't mean I can't contract it. So unless you're going to test folks on a weekly basis, which is impossible, there's no reason to test them before they come back.
Does anyone else have anything to add? Okay, I'm going to move on. The agenda, item 9, old business. There's no old business to be transacted. Next item is item 10A, new business. Discussion and possible action to solicit bids for non-commodity, commercial food, paper goods, and cleaning supplies for the 2020-2021 school year. I believe this is an item to be presented by the Director of Nutrition Services. Is Mr. Garrity, the director, here?
Yeah, yes, I'm here.
Okay, Mr. Garrity, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good evening, board members, Superintendent Testani. We're requesting food and nutrition for discussion, possible action, for consent to move forward with our commercial bids to go to purchasing, City of Bridgeport Purchasing Department for posting. This was an item that was approved at the last Finance Committee meeting.
Okay. Do you want to describe briefly what these items entail?
Okay, yes, I will. So the items that are going to bid consist of non-commodity food items. So there's no USDA involvement. These are grocery items, bakery items consisting of bread, rolls, fruits and vegetables, breakfast items, dairy, which is mainly milk that's consumed in the schools, and our paper and cleaning supplies. So those are the categories that we're looking to bid.
Do any of these items have a minimum specification that have to be met?
Minimum as far as quantity ordered?
No, in terms of quality or certain makeup of the good or ingredients or
Yes.
one ply, two ply.
Yes, they do. Every item on the bid has specific specifications pertaining to that item. So when the bids are posted, they have a few weeks to bid. The bids are opened, and then we sift through them to determine best quality, best price, items meet our specifications, etc.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Garrity? I'll go down the list. Mr. Illingworth?
No questions.
Ms. Brown?
No questions.
Ms. Allen?
None.
Mr. Benahan?
No questions.
Mr. Lombard?
No questions.
Mr. Skolovic?
No questions. As usual, Mr. Garrity answered all questions sufficiently in committee.
So to be clear, you're only soliciting at this point. At some point down the road, you'll be returning to us with a recommendation for various kinds of awards. Correct, Mr. Garrity?
That is very correct, yes.
Okay. All right, then I would entertain a motion to authorize the Food Nutrition Center to solicit bids for non-commodity commercial food, paper goods, and cleaning supplies for the 2020-2021 school year. Is there a
So
motion to that
moved.
effect?
So moved. So
Moved
moved.
by Ms. Allen. Is there a second?
I second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Benahan. All those in favor, is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Are there any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is item 10B, consideration and approval of addendum 1 to contract for transportation services with We Transport LLC. Mr. Testani, this item was transmitted to the board previously. Hopefully you've all had a chance to peruse it, familiarize yourself with it. Mr. Testani, I believe this is your item to present. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, you have the floor.
So, as you all know, the governor's order, executive order, when we closed, was to try to come to some sort of agreement and solution to making sure that once schools were allowed to reopen, that bus companies would be able to do so, so there wouldn't be a break in service. We went back and forth with We Transport to come to an understanding of what that dollar amount would look like in order for them to maintain service once school reopens. If they went under, or all bus companies suffered significant monetary loss, they would, we would all be in trouble as school districts. So after careful consideration, Marlene Siegel and I, going back and forth with them, we came to an understanding that the dollar amount would be 55% of the remaining days left of school from closure, minus a couple of days that were over the 180 threshold.
So this, if I'm summarizing correctly, is to provide some relief to the school bus company to be able to provide some basics like health insurance and the like to its employees that have been laid off. Is that so that they kind of maintain on the payroll? Is that right?
Correct. So that they're able to at least stay enough ahead. So I guess so to speak, so that they don't go under. So when school does resume, there would be a seamless opening of and continuation of service.
So by doing this, their employees would be able to remain, quote unquote, on the books to be able to pick up service in the fall, when demand might start to increase. Is that right?
Correct. So I'm not sure, they're really, they came back originally with a number that was high, a lot more than we had anticipated. We went back and forth, like I said, and we got to a point that we felt, Marlene Siegel and I thought would be a fair amount of money that they would be able to at least stay above water. And we would have a bus company and a contract to go back to once school reopened. Now, again, given the fact that we don't know what's going to happen in the fall, this is only for the remaining days that were left in this school year. This does not bind us to anything in the future, given the fact that next year we could lose a significant amount of bus time. Parents may not choose to operate and put children on buses, so all bets are off once we're done with this.
So it appears that the two of you agreed that prior to all of this, the rate was approximately $113,000 a day, $113,750, $111.
Correct.
And subsequently, you've determined that the rate post the closure or the cessation of service should be reduced to, looks like approximately 65,000 per day.
62.
62.
Yep,
562, 563, which is 55% of the prior rate, the existing rate.
Correct.
And you would pay that for the 62 days that the schools have not been providing, has not been physically opened. Is that right?
Correct.
And do you know what that number adds up to in total?
Well, we'll do the math to get the exact number, but so 62 times 62, 563.11.
It's like 3,878,000.
Yes.
3,878,912 and 82 cents.
Yeah. So again,
repeat that again.
So the total that would be provided to the bus company at the reduced rate to keep them afloat would be 3,878,912 and 82 cents.
Correct.
Thank you.
Are these funds reimbursable under any FEMA or CARES Act application?
So no. So
okay.
Again, per the governor's order, originally when schools closed, this was part of the state not taking back any funds from us, with the understanding that we would continue to pay contracts to a reasonable extent. So this, we thought, I mean, any more than 55% just seemed to be excessive. I know, just speaking to colleagues, some paid the full 100%. Many paid 85 to 90%, but We Transport was good in the negotiation, to the fact that they understood some of our challenges monetarily, and wanted to make sure that they were fair with us, and we wanted to be fair with them. They've been a good partner over the life of our contract with them.
And it's my understanding that We Transport actually furloughed employees, so those folks are actually collecting unemployment benefits.
Correct. So I think overall, it was a win-win for everyone. But again, given the fact that, and we had a conversation with them today in regards to the coming school year, the unknowns are pretty scary, not just for everyone on our end, but for the transportation companies as well, given the fact that some of the things that are being discussed in terms of restrictions would make transportation by bus almost non-existent, really.
Okay. And on WeTransport's end, they have an ability to somehow, if they choose to, make application for any number of programs under the stimulus package to try to bridge any gap between this amount and any other amount that they find themselves in a shortfall. Is that correct?
You know, talking to them, they were excluded from anything in the first, yes, first round. That's why we were encouraged, and other districts throughout the country were encouraged to make sure we came to an agreement with them.
Okay.
Because those funds were given for the sole purpose of the contract, so.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go down the list, see if anyone has any questions. Mr. Illingworth, do you have any questions?
Yes, sir. So, was this vetted through the finance committee?
No.
Would you repeat his question, please, because I couldn't hear him?
Was this vetted through the finance committee?
It was not.
Can I ask why?
I don't have an answer for that. It was something that we have a contract with WeTransport. It is a signed agreement, and to just negotiate in good faith with one of our contractors, we just felt that it was something that we were compelled to do, given the Order 7R from the governor of the state of Connecticut.
Do we need to make a decision on that contract tonight?
Well, we have
I
not.
would say that Mr. Testani asked if this should go through the contracts committee. And this was only put together over the past week. And given we had a full board meeting coming up, this is a time-sensitive issue. And WeTransport has been in a cash flow crunch for the last 2.5 months. I figured as chair of contracts that it was best to just let it go to the full board and let them make their decision rather than needlessly hold it up in the interests of, keeping WeTransport's cash flow.
My only concern is, and I'm not exactly 100% how it works and everything, but my concern is that we are paying them to keep their employees working, plus their benefits, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, they elected to furlough all their employees, so they are getting paid to pay their employees, which they are not. And I know some of it they got to pay towards unemployment, but a lot of that unemployment money is not charged back to the company. That I know for a fact. Like the $600, that's all through the stimulus. So I'm concerned that yes, and as much as I want to support WeTransport, I have a problem with we're paying them to keep their employees working and to get full, and here and they furlough them, but here they are collecting the money for them. So I mean, I have a concern with that, and that's my only concern that I like to just share. I just think it's double dipping on their end. Maybe it's not, but it's just my opinion.
Let me ask you, Mr. Testani, section 2 of this agreement, it says that these funds are for expenses actually incurred by WeTransport to cover any actual wages being paid to active drivers. So if drivers have been furloughed, they're no longer active, so they're no longer paying them. So we're not paying for that.
No.
And this is for any associated FICA and other payroll costs. Again, for anyone who's active. If they're not, that's not included. And then the cost of any health insurance that they may be providing, if they were providing it to begin with. And then the cost of maintaining the fleet in a state of readiness. So do you know what portion of this actually is being attributed to any active employees?
Well, the other thing that is worth mentioning here, that we jeopardize CARES Act funding if we don't hold up our end of the bargain here. So we have a significant amount of dollars that is being given to the Bridgeport Public Schools because of impact of COVID. This is part of the CARES Act agreement that we are obligated to by accepting the money. So if we renege on this dollar amount, we are jeopardizing the remaining balance of that money as well. So again, we are being given money to cover a lot of the expenses that we are incurring because of the COVID-19 pandemic. To turn around then and not pass that along as we're supposed to would be irresponsible on our part.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Early.
I just have another comment, and really, Mr. Superintendent, I really do appreciate your diligence in getting this agreement, along with Ms. Siegel, and you and I have spoken about this in the past, and nothing against free transport, but and the only reason why I bring this up is not because I'm against school bus drivers or anything, but we also realize, we as a district incurred costs and additional costs during this whole pandemic stuff, that some of it may be reimbursable, some may not. I know in the facilities budget, we went over by a good 80,000, maybe in climbing. And I'm sure that's just one department. So that's why, I want the community to understand that this pandemic has also caused us additional fees, and we have incurred expenses that we had not budgeted for. So that's why I'm just, trying to be very conservative, and if it's service that we didn't receive and we don't have to pay for it, hey, I want to take advantage of that.
Well, and just to add to that, before Mr. Sokovic asks a question or makes a comment, it is May 26th, and we're having this discussion. So initially, I drew a line in the sand with them. I know you did. And we weren't going to pay anything. We received a letter. The mayor received a letter on 2 occasions from the Teamsters Union, basically making reference to the fact that we were being irresponsible and not paying our contract because of drivers, even though we knew drivers were furloughed. So we felt good in the fact that those folks were able to get not only unemployment, but the additional $600 under the first stimulus package through the end of July. However, once the CARES Act monies then was going to flow to us, and we knew that we had obligations under those funds, that's when we began negotiating. So it wasn't something that was taken lightly on our part, but we feel comfortable now because of the CARES Act funding that will cover it, and the 55% threshold that we did the right thing, and we stayed and did not jeopardize the fact that when we need weak transport, they're going to be there for us, as they always have.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
Okay, Mr. Sokovic, you have something to say?
Yeah, this may go a long way to allay Mr. Illingworth's concerns. This was broached in finance, but we didn't get the exact numbers in finance, but it was broached in a way that there is some silver linings to the COVID thing to us. This is one of the reasons we can possibly get through this year for the first time in many years without laying people off. While we are paying, according to this contract, it's going to be 55% of our rate, we are still keeping 100% of the funding. So that 45% remainder is basically gravy for us.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Now the state could turn around. If the state would be thinking like we're thinking right now, they're getting money for nothing. They could be thinking, hey, the Board of Education is getting money for nothing. We can reduce their funding, but we've got this funding in excess. So we need to keep this money while it's on the table, and it's important. And as Mr. Testani said, the $600 extra in unemployment, I'm going to work every day, and some of these people with this $600 bonus, they're making more money than me. Now, if I was in a position to stay home and make maybe $200 more when you account for gas, I would try to take advantage of that and see if there's a way I couldn't get called back. So keeping as many people on the bus payroll as possible for long as possible is like a good idea. So I suggest we approve this tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement. It's something that, you know, we have to do this to be able to qualify for our own CARES Act requests that we may be making. It's been negotiated with the school bus company. It's a percentage well below what other districts are doing themselves. And I think it's important that we don't hold this up any further because, as I said, We Transport has just been hanging out there. And they need to know where things are going in terms of their own cash flow. So if Ms. Siegel and Mr. Testani are comfortable with this percentage, that it's appropriate, I'm comfortable with it myself. I'm going to just go down the list just to make sure anybody else has any remarks. Ms. Brown? Ms. Brown?
Sorry, I was trying to press the button. No, I had to, my concerns were on the lines of Mr. Ellingworth as well, but after hearing Testani break it down the way he did, it does make sense. And I understand what we're up against, and I also understand what they're up against as well. So for someone who's new to the whole process, I was definitely like, okay, no, this is just too much, because we as the Board of Ed have our own issues as well. But I understand, so it makes perfect sense. Thanks for breaking it down, because, you know, people like me, I'm still new to all of it.
Ms. Allen?
Well, I guess I don't spend money very well, so I'm comfortable.
Mr. Benahan?
I'm under the line that Mr. Hernandez said, but I know I got to trust what Mr. Testani. I know what he's doing. I know he's trying to do the best we can.
Okay. Lombard?
Yeah, Mr. Testani, can you just give a little light, shed a little light on how it is that we were able to get to such a low percentage of 55 when other districts were at 85 and 90? Like, what made it be that we were able to get it down so low?
Well, I think part of it is that, you know, we have a good partner with We Transport. I also think that other districts were obviously financially in a better place in terms of how they were going to be able to spend money. And I know that other districts probably wish that they had held out a little bit longer as well. I think the district that jumped the gun early probably did not anticipate being closed the rest of the year and figured that we would need to get the drivers back as quickly as possible because they rely on transportation so much. I know that there was other districts that I was in contact with that were holding out as well. I'm not sure where they ended up in their negotiations, but I think we did pretty well. But I also think We Transport got a fair deal as well. Again, we drew the line in the sand early on, but then given the circumstances, I tried to stress several times to our city council during the budget that this CARES Act money was not free money, that it was there to cover expenses. I don't think it quite registered with some folks that we were going to have to pay some of our contracts, and we were obligated to with this money. But I hope and I pray that next time that they trust us a little bit more as we go through the years that we're not telling them things that aren't true. So, I mean, it's a large part of the money from CARES, but there's definitely significant savings, as Mr. Sokovic said.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Sokolovic, I believe you said your piece. So I'm going to ask if anyone cares to make a motion to approve this Amendment 1.
I make the motion.
Bridgeport Board of Education and We Transport LLC as it relates to COVID-19 pandemic and related declaration of public health and civil preparedness emergency.
I will make that motion, Mr. Chair.
I'll second it.
Sokolovic, is there a second?
I second it.
Second.
Second by Ms. Allen. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Are there any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Made by Mr. Illingworth. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Benahan. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, the ayes have it. The time is noted as being 7:54 PM. Stay
Good
safe,
night.
stay well, and we'll see you all in a couple of weeks.
God bless you all. Take care.
Good night.
Aye.
Good night, everyone.